Talking about the sort of roadworthiness of these cars, how would that then apply in a safety and security sense to, just operating on a normal road? And I mean, I know that there was talk of legislation making sort of tune-ups to your cars illegal. I mean, what's happening with all that?
Well, that in fact was a bit of misreporting by an otherwise very responsible and competent journalist. And I was a bit sad about that. And sadly, his newspaper was never willing to print a proper retraction. They did a sort of a half-baked effort. But in a nutshell, the existing Road Traffic Act makes modifications to your vehicle illegal. So the legislation is quite onerous, the existing act. And it is possibly so that it isn't meaningfully enforced across the country. Cape Town enforces the act as the act is written, and that means any meaningful modification that affects the operations of the vehicle makes it unroadworthy and unroadworthyable. But on Killarney, we don't care what you race with. On Killarney, they'll still do a safety advisory to the people, but your vehicle is not on a public road. And so the vehicle doesn't have to be street legal. You can modify and alter that vehicle as you see fit. There's still the issue of getting the vehicle to and from Killarney, of course. If you're going to drive it on the road, it still has to be street legal. But alternatively, you tow it, that means that we can have a wider assortment of vehicles participating in this. Although I must say street to strip is very specifically for street legal vehicles. The intention is to keep it as a vehicle that people drive around with and not vehicles that people have spent massive amounts of money on modifying, and that's racing vehicles. The whole event is aimed at casual participants.
So I'm staying on the issue of roadworthiness. There's been apparently complaints in Cape Town of traffic officials who have deemed cars to be unroadworthy, then stripping their license disc off the car, which is of course illegal. Do you know anything about that?
No, that's distinctly not illegal. If your vehicle, your roadworthiness certificate is issued and you're carrying a roadworthy certificate and your vehicle is not roadworthy, the suspension of the vehicle involves the removal of that roadworthy certificate. And you then have to present your vehicle at a roadworthy test centre, private or councils, to have your vehicle issued with a new roadworthy certificate. Sometimes we find that those roadworthy certificates are reissued to the vehicle without any modifications being made to legalise the vehicle. And that implies a certain degree of fraud from the private testing stations. That's a separate matter we're dealing with the provincial government about, and might well see some vehicle testing stations have their licenses reviewed, or perhaps the entire issue of private testing stations being reconsidered. But in the meantime, it is absolutely correct for the officer to remove the roadworthiness and to the disc and compel the person to acquire a new one.
Okay. Last question, JP. You touched briefly earlier about funding for the Killarney drag racing. What about, I'm sure you'd be able to garner some sponsorship as well. So just tell us more about the funding side of things.
We're effectively, I've dragged council to the swimming pool. We've been standing next to it for a while. This first, probably about 700,000 Rand. It's an application that'll go to the City Special Events Committee. Will be us putting our foot in the water, and maybe later in the year or beginning of next financial year we can dive in. But at least we get the events going. We might not make it to quite once a week. The funding we supplied might not be adequate. But we want to run a test or pilot program for 6 months and see how it goes. We'll be doing a lot of mobilization around it as well, getting people, encouraging people to participate in this way, and to take their actions, which we like. We want them to do the drag racing, but to take it to a safe place where they can do it without interference, without concern for legal consequences. And possibly later this year we'll be able to increase that funding, and I'm also hoping, of course, that corporate sponsors will come on board in a more meaningful way.
So this could become a reality as soon as? In
the next few weeks.
Okay.
I'm thinking that second week of August we'll be able to get the events going.
Excellent. Right, JP, thanks very much for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Keen to see the sport succeed. I've attended a few myself. I have been to Killarney on a number of occasions. There's few things more enjoyable than the smell of burning rubber. At a younger age, I used to go to Pivis in Indiana with significant frequency. But yes, now I'm in a different role, and it's my job to make sure that the things remain legal. So Killarney it is.
Okay. Good. Thank you.